Annyeonghaseyo, party people. Techno back again with another pretty cool lock to take a look at. And this time around, we have this Angel branded padlock from South Korea. And what this is a warded lock, as the keys might give away. So, what we would really think of as a pretty low security, very simplistic lock, that's what we have here. But this one is unique in the mechanism that it employs, at least compared to warded locks that we're familiar with, say, in the US. And we're going to take a closer look at that here in a moment. As to the rest of the lock, we have a laminated steel, presumably some kind of metal body, riveted together, painted over with this nice, almost neon green color. Came in a variety of colors when I picked these up. There were blue, red, yellow, green. I got the green because I like green. And then we have this also steel, presumably shackle, with three cutouts on either side that are sort of indicative of the mechanism at play inside. Again, that we'll take a look at here in a moment. On the rest of the lock, we clearly have this sticker on the front that says Angel, and then in two places, both above and below that, we have the Hangul phonetic spelling of Living Angel. We also have this Jew character here in front of the bottom Living Angel in those parentheses. I'm not 100% sure, and I might be completely wrong on this, but I believe in this context, this has something to do with sort of the status of the company in question, whether it's publicly traded or whether it's a LLC and incorporated. I don't know precisely what it translates to, but I think it has something to do with the status of the company. And then made in Korea below that. Apart from that, we don't have a lot else going on with the lock body, apart from some stamping on the bottom here. We do have Angel stamped in the bottom, very faint, hard to make out, probably because of both the paint and then perhaps the stamping itself. And then on the other side, four Hangul characters that I can't really make out well enough to determine what it is that they say. And on the top of the lock body, there are two more characters stamped that I don't recognize at all, so I'm not entirely sure what they are. They might be Chinese characters actually, but again, not entirely sure. I don't recognize them, but they're there. Now, when it comes to these kinds of locks, this style of lock, this is a pretty common style of lock in South Korea. So, for example, and actually, before we get to that, the keys we can look at also have Angel stamped in them and a code of some kind, whether it's a key code or a bidding code, I have no idea, but code on those. Back to what I was saying, these kinds of locks are fairly common and come in all shapes and sizes. So we see these two Zarker examples here that are not even out of the package. Similar construction, basically the same everything, same mechanism in play here. Largely different sizes, everything from teeny tiny up to fairly substantial size, and again, different branding. As far as the packaging here, what you see is chamulse, that is lock in Korean, as it says in English right below. Apart from that, not a whole lot going on with the packaging. And these are pretty inexpensive too. I think even the largest of these cost the equivalent of, say, $4 or $5. So these are not expensive locks. I don't think they're intended to be high security locks by any stretch of the imagination. And as far as the way padlocks are employed, at least in my observation in South Korea, there are not a lot of what I would call high security locks in use in many places. Now, there could be a number of reasons for that that I could speculate on. Perhaps that's a better subject for another video with some more research going into it. Something I'm actually pretty interested in doing is a sort of a collection of locks found throughout South Korea, both historically and modern day. So perhaps that's coming to the channel in the future. For now, we're just going to stick to taking a look at this one in the mechanism. So when it comes to warded locks that we may be familiar with here in the US, the key looks very much the same. We just have a key that has various cutouts in it and otherwise just has these flat blades. And in this case, a spring-loaded locking pawl towards the top of this lock that engages a single locking cutout on the shackle. There's that locking pawl, and when we turn the key, we retract that just like any other lock. But the way that this is working is really just there is that spring-loaded locking pawl, and the key acts on that with one of these flat blades. The cutouts are simply there to avoid the internal warding to allow the key to turn. So with respect to that, we can very easily take a tool like one of these common warded picks and then use that tool to reach up to the top of the lock and act directly on that spring-loaded locking pawl. It's pretty sticky in this lock, but we should see that pop open in just a moment. So yeah, not a lot to it. I mean, it's a very low skill attack. These do not offer a whole lot of security, especially in terms of being bypassed, so long as you have an appropriate tool to reach up in there and actuate that locking lug. Now, while this functions in a similar manner, and the key is very much similar in the fact that we have these cutouts to avoid warding and these flat blades, the mechanism is entirely different. What we in fact have here are two sets of, as far as I can tell, V-shaped springs on the inside of this. And the key is just literally spreading those springs apart such that the shackle can be released, because otherwise those springs are going to be nested in any of these cutouts on the shackle and preventing it from moving. How this would stand up to a physically destructive attack, I'm not really sure if it would just become a mangled mess or if you'd be able to pretty well pry it out of place if you attempted to, but it's not what we're interested in this particular video. I'll have to acquire some more of these so that I can sort of see how a handful of them stand up to destructive attacks. The ones I have now are strictly for the collection. So in terms of opening this up, using a tool like this is not really going to be super effective. Now, while we do have a warded pick here that is conveniently the same width as the key, or just about the same width as the key, so could pry those spring bars apart, this isn't going to work because there are two sets of them. And actually, before we get into that, let me give you a better idea of how exactly these things are working. So I'll get this borescope out and go ahead and put a key in here so that we can see this at work and open up that shackle. And here, let me go ahead and record this so I can overlay the video as well. And we are recording. So you can see those V-shaped springs, and when I turn the key, they are literally pulled, or rather pushed, out of the way in that shackle hole. So that is the view down the shackle hole. You can take a look at this from the keyhole side, and you can see those same springs here in the keyhole that the key blade would act upon. So that's the mechanism that we're looking at there. Let me just cut this recording. And then, so to that end, while you can pretty easily push any one of these sets of springs out of the way at one time, the other one's always going to be in place, so you wouldn't be able to open up the shackle. So one method of opening this lock that is really kind of a miserable endeavor is to try to shim the shackle. So what we could do, let me open this back up, is basically get some thin shims like this and then start them down the keyhole. And what we would want to do is then use our warded pick to spread those top springs apart and then slide the shim under that. And then once we get to the bottom set, do the same thing, move to the bottom and slide the shim under those springs so that now we have something preventing those spring bars from engaging the shackle, and we can just kind of yank this open. This kind of works, and of course you have to do it on both sides. So one, it is time intensive. If the objective here is to prevent easily bypassing the lock and taking us quite a bit of time to do it, this is effective in that regard, at least in my experience, because what tends to happen is as you are pushing those spring bars out of the way and sliding the shim down, it tends to get jammed up in the cutouts of the shackle itself. So you end up wrecking a lot of these little shims, and these are just the metal strips out of those magnetic sort of things that are stuck to retail packaging. But what tends to happen is these will get jammed up, and then actually getting this the whole way in is definitely a test of patience, because it can take quite a while, if at all, and it's kind of a crapshoot if you're going to be able to do it in any reasonable amount of time to get that open. But it does work if you want to take that avenue. Now, the other avenue that we can potentially take to open this up is Presumably somebody could create a dedicated tool that has the proper spacing to get both spring bars at once. We don't have that. I haven't taken it upon myself to make one. But let's say, for instance, we have 2 of these now. So what we can do is get a rough feel for where those 2 spring bars are located with either one of these. So in that case, I am on the top set of springs at just about that location. And then we can take the second one and try to space this out such that we have a makeshift single key in a sense. And so the second set of spring bars are actually right inside the keyway here. They're not too far in. There's a little bit of space. There's maybe 3 layers of this laminated metal before you reach the opening where the spring bars are. So I'm just going to kind of approximate that distance and then see if we can grab both of these at the same time. And we can. So, and that was, I couldn't have pulled that off better if I tried 50 more times. So that was pure luck that I got the, pretty much the spacing spot on the first try. But that's the idea. So you can use these tools to open these up. You will just need 2 of them, and you'll need to get a pretty good idea of where those spring bars are spaced out to engage both at the same time. But it is possible. The shimming aspect is possible, but I wouldn't recommend it, especially if you can pull this off. But apart from that, that is it for this particular Angel padlock from South Korea, that kind of unique warded lock mechanism. And with that, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this. I do truly appreciate it. Thank you very much for that. And until next time, take care, everyone. I will catch you later.